webinar. And this is very sensitive topic for a lot of people because a lot of testers who work hard in the agile / Kanban world, they get overwhelmed. They have no time for personal growth, for their personal hobbies in life. So I decided to make a webinar to share my personal experience, how I actually conquered that, and call this How to Optimize a Manual Tester's Overwhelming Work Schedule. And obviously the subtitle is slash your 8 to 10 hours crazy workday. For some people, it's actually 8 to 12 hours workday in half while staying productive. So this is going to be a very interesting topic because a lot of you who initially start working as the manual testers still is working in this endless cycle. So it's going to be fun for all of you to see all these hints and life hacks, how I actually solve this issue. So for those who are not acquainted with me, my name is Igor. I'm CEO and founder of a company called Engenious, which around since 2019. This is not the first company I founded. This is my second venture. I was a pretty long time, since 2013, in educational space. I taught a lot of courses on manual test automation, testing strategy, resumes, interview processes over the course of 9 years as of today. Also worked at Silicon Valley in various startups, from the big names, Barnes & Noble, Expedia. I dedicated 5 years of my life, and obviously Tinder, I spent there for 6 years. So I have all this experience working in small companies as well as at enterprises that I will share with you today, that actually taught me a good lesson of how not to schedule your work and live your life, right? So it's going to be fun. The entire presentation today was inspired by the book called 4-Hour Workweek. If you haven't read that, I really recommend it. When I was working in the Barnes & Noble in 2009, from 2009 to 2012, I actually read this book for free. Obviously, Barnes & Noble have a lot of free content for digital e-readers, which we work upon, called Nook. And this book actually came as a test book. So I read it and I was super inspired. I decided to change my life because I was just like most of you, working day and night on releases and testing. And so again, 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. This is a very good book. You can get it on Amazon, either hard copy, Audible, either way, truly recommend. So here's the important fact. I mean, that's where the whole thing started. Manual testers are caught in the dead loop cycles. So obviously manual testers are not the only position in the company that actually caught in that loop. Among them are product managers, project managers. They are always in this endless release cycles. And they actually get overwhelmed. But why testers? Why testers are actually the worst? Because think about it, if you look at the continuous integration, continuous testing, continuous delivery process, which every company tried to push as the shift left concept, right? Which is actually doesn't work in a lot of companies. QA, manual testers, quality assurance engineers, still up to date, the major bottleneck. Why? Because what happens is you continuously get stuck in this testing during dev cycle, have meetings with design to understand like what you're going to test. At the end, you have to be as a part of a release team and do the regression testing. You have to be post-release process, bug triaging, all this stuff that you have to do. So you cannot get literally a breath. You cannot catch the breath. You basically get stuck in this non-stop weekly or bi-weekly releases, which I think changes your life after some time, right? You get burdened. So think about day-to-day QA activities, right? So you have to craft in test cases, task planning during testing cycle. You have to be work with developers, sync up with them continuously to get requirements, how to test their features, bug fixes, running regression, be part of release checklist, post-release checklist, not mentioning the filing bug reports, make sure the bugs are not stale, conduct bug triage with the teams. And this is just the tip of iceberg, what the manual testers do nowadays, right? And you have to do it not just once, like it used to be back in the day, right? You work for 6 months on a project and you do all these activities, but you have to do it on daily basis, week after week, without a room to breathe. And as you know, as a project growing, right, the new features get added. Obviously, there's more testing, and never enough resources. They even say that in Silicon Valley, there's never enough testing, right? So type of testing that you guys conduct, right? This is insane. Like the functional, UI, exploratory, analytics, localization, accessibility, API testing, right? So there's different type of testing that you have to perform, depends on your position, right? And then again, this is not a comprehensive list. There's more than that, right? But this is exactly what type of testing you do day-to-day work. So you cannot just free yourself out of these activities. You have to test all of this. Outcome of all this process, you get burned out. A lot of folks that I used to teach, and still my alumni from previous courses that I taught back in the days, they always complain to me, say, listen, if I am a true agile tester, in like in 6 months, people get burned down. They actually start missing defects. They do not have time to learn the skills. A lot of people are like, hey, why don't you learn how to, like do test automation, for instance, right? You have to learn programming language, you have to learn the framework, you have to learn a lot of different skills, right? Basic Linux, networking concept, and other things. But how? If you get caught in these day-to-day activities of vigorous testing and the pressure, right? And the nonstop communication, endless meetings, meeting after meeting, you have to do the work. You have no time and energy to teach yourself new skills. You don't have time to learn. So obviously, this is the one burden. But the most important thing, you do not have a personal life. A lot of people get so much burnout that on the weekend, they just basically want to just sleep and do nothing, right? They get demotivated, they get depressed, and that's the result of this nonstop burning. So the question to all of you, I just like to hear, we have so far 14 participants, and my assistant Yelena gonna turn the poll. The question is, do you feel burned out in your current job? Just answer yes or no. I would like to see that, or you feel somewhat, right? So please just take a second and tap on the buttons very quick. It's only literally, we have 6 out of 12 participants, so I give another couple seconds to run the poll. Okay, 5 more folks left, so please take a second to click. So I'm going to share the results. All right, I can see people participating. This is great. All right, that's good enough. 2 folks probably out of the computer, so we have 10 out of 12 people who have participated. So 11, nice. It actually changes. All right, here's the results. So the results of the poll I've shared with everybody, you can see that. So we have 27% said yes, 27 people feel burned out, they basically have no room to breathe. 36% feel, no, and 36% feel somewhat. This is a good thing, like because somewhat and yes mean that a lot of you already either on the border of like, okay, I cannot do this anymore, I should probably start searching for a new job, or do something about this, right? So for those folks who are not burned out yet, you can take my word, you will. Maybe not at this job. At some point, you're going to get to another job where they're going to put a lot of pressure. Why? Because testing is still up to date, is a big, huge bottleneck, right? And a lot of companies haven't figured out the way to do smart testing, right? There are companies that are doing the best practices in terms of testing, and that's where they value what they call work-life balance. However, I can count them on one hand. Majority of the corporations, they don't care. They basically, for them, testing is just always the last activity you have to perform. If there's something goes wrong, they blame you. Right? So how to get out of this infinite loop, right? You, again, at some point, if you're one of these people who got caught in this endless release process, endless testing, nonstop action, how to get out of this? And the answer to your question, we have to go to different role. Obviously, as a manual tester, you cannot get out of this loop ever. And that's what I figured out in 2010 when I was working as a manual tester in the Barnes & Noble testing the digital e-reader Nook. I realized that if I do nothing about this, my life pretty much will be blank. I mean, I will be burned out and I will quit. So that's when in 2011, I started heavily investing in coding, and I tried to learn test automation as soon as possible. But remember what I said, how you can learn something if you get stuck in these endless processes. And that's what we're going to talk about next. This is the fun time of presentation. All right. Why called engineering job with a soft commitment? Why? Because there's engineering job with the hard commitment. And example of the hard commitment jobs is the software developers. Why? Because software developers are developing features and fixing bugs. And if they don't do that, it's very visual, right? It means that the project manager who assign you a certain number of story points to develop a feature and you're not done, you guess what? You're going to work overtime to finish it on time. It doesn't matter. So you always put there's always a hard commitment. There's always that burden on your shoulders that you have to deliver something on time. Engineering job was a soft commitment. This is the job of SDET, or software developer engineer in test. Some people call this automation engineer interchangeably, but this is the role we're going to talk about and why this is the way to get out of this. So first, I promise you, you're not going to work more than 4-6 hours a day if you do it the right way. Second, your work will be independent. What it means, you're not going to be part of this sprint processes anymore. You're not going to run this like short iterations of weekly or bi-weekly, right? Because you will be on a separate schedule. And you will be disintegrated from the sprint activities. So you're not going to participate in bug triages. You're not going to participate in a lot of activities. However, with the shifting left, a lot of automation engineers were molded into the what we call in the pods, right? The small functional teams. However, again, manual testers are the ones who are responsible for continuous testing and validation user story. Automation engineers are not part of that. I'm going to actually share you how to get there, right? How to get squeezed in that space. So SDET daily activities, that's what true SDETs do. And again, a lot of people say, always ask me, what's the difference between automation engineer and SDET? And there's a major difference. SDET is more a technical role of a software developer rather than a QA, right? You're not going to be a quality assurance engineer anymore. You will be a developer. The only thing you're going to work on the testing infrastructure, right? You will be the facilitator. You're not going to be the executor. So what it means, you're going to basically work on your own backlog of automation, which actually going to come from the manual testers, not from the product. You're going to estimate your own tasks. So you're going to put the estimate you want. So you're going to say it's going to take me 2, 3, 4 story points, or if it's an hours or Fibonacci, you're going to make your own estimates how much time is going to take to finish that automation story. You're going to monitor, test, and CI and fix them if they get broken. You're going to work on isolated pull requests. So basically, your pull request will be only for your test, not for the code for the application, right? So again, you can be your own boss. What do you do in that PR? And usually, pull requests for SDETs are very rarely get checked by developers. So most likely, other SDETs are going to check. There will be automated checks, like all tests supposed to be green, but again, you're going to be your own boss. Manual testers, again, like I mentioned, will be your major client. So you will talk to them all the time what should be automated to make their life easier. So you're gonna write automated test once and gonna run after each pull request merge or pre-merge, depends on your setup, but there's no more manual regression. So this is basically going to be on the going to run as often as the changes from the development team. So every time they open a pull request with some feature changes, a bug fix is going to trigger all your tests. So you don't have to do it manually anymore. And perform bi-weekly demos of automation tests to the engineering team. So this is the way to be transparent. Is like, okay, guys, here's what I've done. Here's the test I automated. You want to see that? And manual testers and product team engineers could be your judge. Say, oh, this is great. This is good coverage. So again, you're going to run in your own world and you slowly going to exit from this nonstop action because manual testers are going to continue to do that, right? You just basically helping them to reduce manual regression by automating a lot of things, right? So when you're talking about automation, I don't know why, but a lot of people thinking about Selenium WebDriver. But this is just 1/10, if not 1/20th of the things the automation engineers do, right? I'm talking about SDET, right? SDETs do a lot of things. You can do functional automation, right? You can do UI automation like Applet tools, localization automation, could be localization, labeling, validation versus the Applet tools UI visual testing for different locales. Accessibility testing is a big one. You can do test automation for accessibility. For web, you can do accessibility scanners. For iOS and Android, you can validate accessibility labels for the voiceover controls. Analytics is a huge one. Testing analytics, client analytics manually is very cumbersome process, extremely painful and long. So automating that will take a lot of manual things out of their shoulders. Backend, you can do a lot of things in backend. You can do API facade automation, microservices, databases, and backend analytics. Again, there's a lot of activities that the SDETs can be done, depends on which team you're going to work in, but the concept I showed in the previous slide applies for them as well. So let's go next. Again, before I go to the next slide, I would like to remind all of you, please take a moment and post questions in Q&A session in a Zoom. So I see all these questions at the end of the webinar, and we'll be able to answer them in the order I receive them. So the big question is like, okay, Igor, you are proposing like, okay, to go away from crazy burden schedule manual testing to become SDET, but how I can become an SDET if I continuously get stuck in this endless testing loop, right? So it's a chicken and egg problem. So you are busy, but at the same time have to learn a new skill, which is probably going to take you some time. And the answer, I've done this, and that's what I'm going to share my personal experience, how I've done this, and hopefully it's going to apply to you. So first of all, you always have to communicate your intention to your leadership team. So they have to expect something. In your one-on-one with your direct manager or director of your team, you can say, I would like to learn a new skill, which will help me in my profession. And you can say that I'm super tired of these regressions because I'm done manually. I can automate a lot of things if you give me some room to breathe. So I would like to let you know that every week I'm going to spend 4 hours out of my work schedule to learn this. And they're okay to this. They're going to put you for a quarterly goal or your monthly goals that you're going to work on this and say, listen, I'm going to work on this. I'm going to show what I've learned after this time. So you sign up yourself for the commitment, but at the same time, in return, you ask management to give you time for that. A lot of times, in my case, it worked. They said, yes, you can do that. You can actually look at the time and you can learn these new skills. Set the right expectation, right? Again, that's exactly what I'm talking about. You basically have to say that, yes, you give me time, but in return, I'm going to show you something back. So again, leadership expects some work in return. And most important thing, again, I'm going to reiterate my thoughts, that what you're going to learn is going to benefit the team. So because learning for sake of learning or get a new job, obviously nobody will give you that. But you say, like, for instance, let me give you an example. I'm working right now on the payment system, and I spent 8 hours just to test the whole manual test cases to cover whole payment system. If I'm going to learn new test skill for new test automation skill, I can actually cut this time in half. So instead of 8 hours, I can do 4 hours validation. And give me 1 quarter and I'll show you this. So basically ask for not just give me time to learn, but I'm going to give you something back. Another big thing that I've done in my past, you can move to the teams with less commitments. If you feel super burned out, like the PM is continuously pushing you for testing, you have literally, they will tell you, listen, yes, your director told you you have time for learning automation, but as a project manager, I don't care. We have commitments, you have to test all user stories. Sorry, but I won't be able to give you this. And you will be in that situation. In that case, you can talk to the director and say, listen, I feel burned out on the team. I would like to learn new skills. Can you move me to the different team? Obviously, when you work sometime for the company, you know which teams have less commitments. Some teams are experimental teams. They do not produce much. They more do experiments like A/B tests. Move to that team. Move to something that is actually less visible and less transparent. Go to the team within the company that more, I would say, running on own schedule, that doesn't have a hard commitments to deliver things on time. Let me give you an example. If we break out any mobile application, right, obviously the payment team will be the worst. Why? Because the payments are actually bread and butter. They make the business. However, the team that does all the A/B tests for new future features that probably most of them never going to see daylight, this is probably the team you want to go in. So you can, stay there, work with them, and experiment in automation. Another big, again, hint from me, this is my personal recommendation. A lot of people ask me, okay, but how I can learn test automation if I don't have the project to actually test? I said, don't look for the project, try to test your application at work. Nobody will stop you from that, right? Nobody will hit your hands and say, hey, you cannot do that. So don't be afraid to start automation in your current job, even if nobody asks you. Be proactive, offer that. Tell your director that you're going to automate the most painful feature that very hard to test manually. So do that. So again, you can find all the pain points automate an existing job. Again, you obviously will do a very ugly job in the beginning because you never done this, but at least you will try and you will make it better. And the more you're going to learn it, you're going to definitely improve. Another big pitfall is a lot of times people try to learn entire programming language to actually start automation. This is the very bad approach. Why? Because you will never learn the entire language, right? It's going to take you years to learn. That's why people go to 4-year college for computer science degree, right? To learn that. So instead of like trying to learn the entire programming language in perfection, you try to learn the basics, the fundamentals to get started the work done. So start putting yourself a goal. Like, I would like to automate 1 test case in 1 month. I mean, this is a very reasonable goal, and try to do the best you can, even the ugly way, even the wrong way, but do it. And then look at this and try to improve rather than learn the entire program first. Remember, you're not alone, because let's say if you pick up, let's say IIS application, right, and would like to automate that, IIS automation done in Swift. So you're going to have a lot of IIS developers that also know Swift better than you are. What I've done in the past, I built alliances with the development team, and I asked them, help me out. I bring you to the coffee, I can, do this. I try to bribe them, and I learn from them a lot because they know programming language better than you are. They can help you to organize your tests in a better way than you do. But you do first and show them and say, listen, how can I prove that? And a lot of people are willing to help for free on your team. And remember, the most important thing, once you actually successfully do this project, guess what? Your boss will promote you. I was like, wow, you did the extra mile. You did manual testing while learning automation. Now you automated 50% of your regression test suite on your team. And a lot of times they will promote you. If not, you can get a better job anyway, right? And the most important thing is that once you get all the skills you put in your resume, so you become very, very marketable person. Because nowadays, you more than manual testers, you know how things work from the the platform point of view. So again, this is the secret recipe from me, but Aristotle also said the same. This is Aristotle's quote. For the things we have to learn before we can do them, we'll learn by doing them. So again, a lot of people always tell me, I want to learn automation, but I never had the time to learn. I would like to do this. I didn't have opportunity to do that. This is wrong. You always have opportunity to just start doing this. Instead of complaining about like things you don't know, start do that and learning on the way. And that's the only way to break through in your career. Okay, very important quote, going to change your mindset. Then a lot of people ask me, okay, there's so many like things to learn, and a lot of people get distracted. Yes, there is ample information, YouTube, Udemy, and a lot of different resources. The two resources are personal like, and I'm sharing with you. And again, after this webinar, I'm going to share with you slides as well as the recording this webinar. So you will don't try to handwrite all these resources right now. You will see them right after. Next day, you're going to get recording and all material. So two resources are personal like, one of them called Test Automation University. Apple Tools, obviously, a lot of people familiar with that company. They're huge in UI automation space using AI. Big company out of Silicon Valley, Palo Alto to be more precise. They're all over the place. Every conference that I go to, they always have the best booth. And they have Test Automation University. Test Automation University has a lot of free courses, completely free, and they even have score points. You can actually be visible on top of it. So a lot of them, the great place to discover what would like to automate. Another one I like a lot, if you would like to go to Android space, specifically for native Android automation using Espresso, is Coding with Mitch. He has one free course and one paid, which is very cheap. I think it's like under $100 or maybe $150, but that's a very comprehensive Espresso course. Mitch itself is the Android developer. He has a lot of courses in Android development. He has an amazing YouTube channel, and I like the style he teaches. Again, I'm not talking about like introductory course. I'm talking about comprehensive course. It means that if you go through his course, you will be able to automate on enterprise level. So really, again, I give you, this is like the resource for Android native automation. Test Automation University, just to see what you would like to do. They have courses on backend automation, on client side, Python, JavaScript, Java, Ruby, JavaScript, Swift, Kotlin, everything, whatever you like. So that's why for true beginners, to find your domain where you would like to grow professionally, Test Automation University Apple Tools is a great resource. Another question a lot of people ask me, okay, I realize what I want to do, but I still like my company is not allowing me to do that, or my application is not the best resource to automate, or in my company, if I'm a manual tester, the policy is that they do not give me access to the source code, so I cannot automate. So there will be cases like I mentioned. Therefore, I'm listing external project where you can learn test automation. So for Espresso, there's a testing samples from the Android. It's supported by Google. So you can actually automate different samples of UI, more than enough to practice Espresso. For the web, I like two projects. One in the internet, which has all the use cases for positive, negative test cases for Selenium WebDriver. Doesn't matter what program language you use. This is amazing site to practice every possible scenario. But Dave Hafner actually right now works at the Apple Tools as the mentor and the person behind their Selenium ID recording tool. Another Sauce Labs, supporting also the internet, also great resource. For the REST API, I found Slack API automation is a really good resource. Slack, a lot of people use Slack in professional careers and their jobs. Recommending to automate the APIs from the Slack. Good documentation. Obviously, Test Automation University, as I mentioned, is another great resource. Again, don't try to handwrite this. You're going to get all this information after the webinar. So another resource that, in case if you'd like to pick your career, is the IES SDET, and specifically work as an IES test automation engineer, or IES SDET. I developed a course. I spent with the team of Engenious engineers over more than a year to develop this course, and it's currently available. I can show on my screen. It's currently available on the Udemy platform. It's right here. This is the comprehensive course on the XUI test. This course has 47 lectures, and the material, like I said, I spent 1 year to build this course, and it's a material from all the projects from all the companies we're working with. This is the most advanced course you can ever get. It's for beginners as well as for people who are seasonal automation engineers. Again, I think that we're going to send you a discount. I'm not going to lie, I think it's more than 40% for sure for this course. This is a great way if you would like to transition to the IES development world. And when I was building this course, the idea was that not only you will transit from manual tester to the IES SDET, I think that after working 1 year or 2 years in IES SDET, you're going to become IES engineer. So this is more like IES engineering kind of transitioning course. So this is something that we build in Engenious and highly recommend. So that's all I have for today's webinar. Let's go to Q&A session. I see only one question. Okay, here's the second one, third one coming. Good. So let's go one by one. I'm gonna try to answer them based on the time that permits. So first question, if you decide to work for one or more company as a QA, when the second company hires you, is there a way that the first company HR can be notified someone that you have one more gig now? Wow, this is a very provocative question. So the answer to the first question, it depends. I know a lot of folks try to do 2 jobs, but be careful. So if you are, the first job as a manual tester and the second job as that, so how are you going to manage all the meetings, right? So obviously working as the SDET, you're not going to have that many meetings. So having 2 jobs as SDET is actually possible, but doing manual testing job and SDET is going to be really hard because you're going to get conflicts in the meetings. In terms of the, there's no a strict law that tell you cannot have, you cannot have more, I mean, you can have more than one job, but there's no strict law. But however, the company policy might basically tell you that you cannot work for the company that performs the same business. Let me give you an example. You work for PayPal and Venmo hires you. So then you're going to have a conflict of interest that for that thing you can get sued. If you're working for companies in 2 different spaces and nobody knows about this, I mean, as long as you can perform the job and nobody finds out, I think you'll be fine. Be careful, because at that point you can be burned out, and you can do it for a short period of time. So yes, you can do that, but probably not for long term. At some point, you're going to choose one job over another. But short term, you can do that definitely, yes. But there's no law that will tell you cannot do that, right? Again, unless there's conflict of interest. Hopefully I answered the question. Another one, if you are a QA manager, wants you to manage 2 domains, IES, Android automation, and manual, how do you push back, deal with this? Yeah, very good question. So unfortunately, this is just very unfortunate truth. A lot of managers are super untechnical, so they don't know what I'm talking about. So they've been once upon a time, long time ago, they were manual testers before in mobile era. And they have no idea how the mobile technology is working or web technology is working. So you should ask the question back to your manager. Have you seen an iOS developer to do an Android job? Or have you seen Android developer to do an iOS job? Even push the ball further. Have you seen the web developer who does iOS and Android? And the answer from him will be no. Same thing in testing. Obviously, from manual testing point of view, you can test iOS and Android and web clients. You can. Yeah. And the question is, will you be productive? Right? The big question, will be productive? You can. From automation point of view, definitely not. Because if you want to automate your tests in such a way that are they, number one, very fast, they're fast. Number two, very stable, right? And number three, very agile. So it means that they can change as the product change. The answer to your question, you won't be able to do that on all three platforms. You can only do it one or another, right? Because you have to go in depth with the platform. You have to learn how the Android or iOS or web actually works under the hood in order to learn, for instance, for network stubbing, or to control A/B test, or to test analytics, to do interceptors, or to do like advanced things that you cannot learn overnight. So you have to go in the weeds of that platform in order to automate that. So yes, you have to explain it to your manager, say, yes, I mean, I can do that, but I won't be able to be successful in either of them. So again, set the right expectations. Say, I can, it's going to be disaster. Do you want that? I can do that. Hopefully I answer a question. Another question is, Igor, maybe from the personal experience, how the US companies are dealing with the employees if they decide to work from Europe? Again, there is not a law, right, that will prohibit you to work from anywhere in the world. However, the company policies might tell you that if you want to work from Europe, you have to have a different computer. You have to get special permission. I personally can work from Europe. However, there's certain countries enlisted for the company policy that are hazards. For instance, North Korea. At the moment, I think you will have issue with Ukraine, Russia, and Belarus because of the conflict. Certain countries like I know that United Arab Emirates could have issues. You have to check the company policy and ask them, but most companies are okay for the remote jobs. I think working from Europe have no problem. The question is the time zone, how you're going to attend the meetings. Again, if you're going to ask that, you will be able to manage this. So the answer that yes, if you are in technical role, you're going to write code much easier. When you QA and you have to do like bug triage meeting like at 2-3 a.m. in the morning European time because it's going to be morning here in US, I think it's going to kill yourself. Next question. Are you guys planning to launch a bootcamp on Android UI automation with Jetpack Compose and Kotlin? We're thinking about this. Yeah, a lot of people asking because Jetpack Compose start get adopted more than Swift UI for iOS. So we might, definitely not this year, maybe first quarter 2023. We're going to launch the course. Either we're going to record this course similar to the iOS and post this on the platform, or maybe a bootcamp. We're thinking even bring back the live bootcamps where we're actually going to teach in person. But for now, the only course we have is the iOS course on Udemy. How to deal with the meetings overlap if you have 2 gigs? Thank you. Oh, this is that's exactly the whole presentation is today. So when you are a manual tester, it's really hard because you have a lot of meetings. When you are an SDET, right, you're going to have way less. I mean, you not have to be part of any sprints planning. You don't have to be, you're on your own schedule. So very rarely you're going to overlap. But if you're overlapping, you can always say, hey, I need to pick up my son from the school, or I have the commitment with my girlfriend or wife. You can always find an excuse to move the meeting for the personal reason. But you can do it maybe for 1 meeting. But there's 2 meetings overlap, it becomes very suspicious. So be careful. You know, don't play with the fire. How to deal with 3 meetings at the same time? Yeah, that's an issue. So probably have to start sorting out to make a decision, right? Either quit the job or change the jobs. Again, this is a tricky question. 3 meetings overlap. This is tough. Okay. All right, I'm going to take last question before we're going to wrap up. So, Igor, what do you think is the most challenging for the mobile QAs now? Very good question. What's challenging for mobile QA? If for manual or for automation, can you clarify, please? Because there are two different challenges. Please write in the QA session. Is it okay? In general, for me, okay. In general, for mobile testing, in general, okay. There's a lot of things that are actually challenging as a mobile tester, but let me go through very important highlights. Number one, let me give you an example. You are testing on the latest iPhone 13, iOS 15, and running a full regression and everything works. Then your product comes to you and say, hey, unfortunately, we got an issue on iOS 13.2 where the person cannot log in, and we still have 30% of users of that OS version. How are you going to cover all these versions and still mitigate the risk? The answer is analytics. You have to talk to analytics team. That's one. You can actually talk to the release managers or people who release application. They can take a look at Google Play Console or the App Store Connect and see what OS versions are consumed mostly by your users of the application, and select those things, and then start work with automation team to at least cover most important flows, like the most important flows, like P0 test cases for all these versions, because manual, you won't be able to do that. You cannot test simultaneously on 10 iPhone devices. That's one challenge, because that's going to happen all the time. Second challenge is device screen segmentation. It works on one screen, doesn't work on another screen. Also, the test covers different screens. Can be easily covered with Applet tools, UI testing. That's where you can see like how your application actually look by different screen sizes. You can use emulation for that. You have to use real devices. Applet tools the best way to do that. Analytics, very hard, like I mentioned, to do manually. Client analytics, better to do by automation, by intercepting the analytics event, client analytics, I'm talking about it. Another big challenge is because mobile devices have a lot of integration, depends. We're talking about Internet of Things, like integration with physical devices, like if you're testing headphones, if you're testing some medical devices, this is going to be a challenge with integration. So all depends, but also besides that, push notifications is a big challenge to test. A/B testing, you have to consider A/B test, how you're going to control A/B test, which one to test, which not, also could be done by automation. So this is the common challenges. A lot of times, like you need to bypass logins by using deep linking, for instance, testing deep links. This is very device oriented, sorry, very mobile oriented. So all these things are probably the challenges of mobile testing. You have to be proficient with Charles proxy, for instance, how the client will behave if there's 500 error. You cannot tell the server to throw 500 error. You have to use Charles to override the response to 500 and simulate the failure. So see how the client will handle this. So you have to also do that. So this is like hopefully answer your question in general. How do you explain working 2 full-time jobs simultaneously for if you work for the year for this? Basically, what a person tried to ask, like, if I work 2 jobs simultaneously, how would I put in resume? You would choose one or another. Whatever you like the most, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, nobody cares how many jobs you work, is the skills you have. So what you can do, you can put 1 job and all the skills you learn in 2 jobs. It would be better than have 2 jobs. I mean, in terms of find out background check, the funny thing that I used to have 3 jobs. Nobody cares. So they only care about the main job. I mean, depends. If you go for banking, they might raise the question because banks are like, or insurance companies are very strict. I think that in most companies, they don't care because 1 job is the main, second could be as the contract. A lot of people, like for instance, board of directors, they sit on 5 boards, right? 5 boards, and there's no problem with that. The question is not about how many jobs you have, how you manage them. And that's what I tried. The purpose of this webinar is not to have 3, 4 jobs, is to how you get your life back, right? How you can maximize your profit. For instance, if you become great as that and make 300,000 a year in Netflix, you don't need 2 jobs, because you're going to make 300,000 base salary and another 200,000 in stock options. You're going to have $500,000 a year working 1 job. And as an asset, to work only 6 hours a day and do your hobbies, play golf, tennis, do whatever you want. That's the idea of this webinar. It's not like how you can squeeze 2 jobs or 3 jobs, right? Again, it's more about how you can excel your career and work less and have your life back. All right, thank you all for joining. I hope you guys enjoyed it.